Please welcome to the stage Vice President of Community Pass Market Development, Sub-Saharan Africa at Mastercard, Daniel Huba, in conversation with Semafor Chief Revenue Officer, Rachel Oppenheim.
Oh. I am so excited to have this conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Daniel, you are the Community Pass Market Development Lead for Sub-Saharan Africa for Mastercard.
Yes.
In your role, you oversee market implementation, stakeholder and customer management, solution delivery, and support. I'd love you to tell everybody what is Community Pass, what does market implementation look like, and what brought you to the role that you're in at Mastercard as well?
Thanks, Rachel. And really, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm very happy that we got a chance to come here and talk about our work. Community Pass really is a social enterprise within Mastercard with the mandate to enable the delivery of critical services to individual and businesses at last mile through leveraging the technology itself. And for us, it's important to put context to why Mastercard believes very strongly in the power of technology for last mile. Now, if you look at the African continent where I come from, 1.3 billion people, though we are a frontier when it comes to mobile money, still 9 or 8 out of every 10 transactions in Africa is still cash. 50% of our people who are adults don't have any financial account, whether it's mobile or bank. And out of every 10 transacting adults in Africa, 6 of them are transacting offline. So we don't see their transactions today. Now, for us, that is where the opportunity is. The opportunity to be able to provide visibility to these individuals and businesses when they are transacting offline. And that's really what we do from a community perspective. Provide the platform, the technology that brings to life and amplify the visibility of these individuals and business when they transact offline. So that's what we do.
That's incredible. Well, we've heard all throughout the day that Africa is on the rise on so many levels. Its population has grown from 883 million to 1.3, I heard someone say 1.2 billion earlier today, with 60% of its people under the age of 30. The average age is 19. So much potential in the region. We've been talking about it all day, but still, the digital transformation, particularly for financial inclusion, tends to just represent incredible barriers. What do you think is standing in the way currently?
So a couple of things. I think one big challenge that is there is really the cost to serve at last mile. That it's expensive to be able to deliver infrastructure that reaches our people, because a majority of our population still are in rural communities and in rural areas. Now, the cost to be able to deliver, service at last mile is a big challenge. And that is because one of the physical infrastructure, when you talk about electricity or connectivity itself. I think the second thing that is a challenge is the readiness of the private sector, and most importantly, financial institutions, to be able to take additional risks, especially to this segment. And I always give the example, in Kenya, for example, today we work with a financial institution, and we have just been on a journey of trying to help the financial institution build its KYC process by going after the farming community for the first time.
I see.
And we've been able to support this bank to be able to actually provide KYC to close to 500,000 farmers. And the new data that is just coming through is just a game changer. So for me, infrastructure, the fear of taking additional risk, and the last point for me is really the lack of the digital tools that can be able to work for our population. In Africa, you cannot just assume that we will export technology and bring it in to be able to serve our people. It needs to be relevant to our use cases. The other point, I think, for me, and the last one, is how we define business.
Oh, of course.
So, when we talk about business for our communities in Africa, and we talk about micro and small and medium enterprises, it is important to also then understand what sort of businesses they run and what are then the touch points. So that we are not talking about traditional agents of banking or financial institutions. How do we convert, for example, farmer cooperatives to be acceptance point to deliver financial services? So these are things that must change if we are to be able to roll out technology to our continent.
So you've talked a bit about the role of the private sector.
Yes.
What does it look like for the private sector, for regulators, and for other stakeholders to come together on this? And what do you see the role of private versus public sector stakeholders here?
I think for the private sectors, we will continue to be the leaders from an innovation perspective. I think we owe the continent a reason to continuously innovate. Mm-hmm. And we owe the continent a reason to provide digital tools that are relevant. And that is a critical role that we play. I think the second role we can also play is bring in our experience. And if I look at Mastercard, for example, when it comes to issues of data, privacy, and standards, there's a lot that we've learned into our payment business that we can be able to transfer to assist the next level of technology. So that's what we do from a private sector perspective. Mm-hmm. For governments,
right.
I think one of the things that is critical for our governments to focus on is to look at digitization as a public good. It is important for government to invest more to open up the informal settlement, for example, or sector of the economy, to be able to roll out the physical infrastructure when it comes to electricity, for example. The second role for government is to be proactive in providing policies that are going to promote innovation, and not to stifle innovation for that matter. I am a strong believer that regulation should not be a barrier to innovation, that our regulation in Africa should be able to promote innovation. And the last point, I think, for all of us, both private sector and government, is the opportunity to leverage the young people in Africa, mm-hmm. and to be able to build a new digital army of what I call digital agents. That we need service providers of technologies at LACMA. The people who can be these service providers are our young people. And that's why in Mastercard, for example, we have all this focus on a shared digital agent network, where we are able to enable young people in their villages to become the agents of change when it comes to technology, so that service providers can leverage them to deliver technology as last mile. And that requires partnership between all of us. And if we do that, we will move the needle. We will be able to include more people, and we'll be able to bring more digitization as a path to prosperity for our people.
That's great. Well, it's really, really important when talking about financial inclusion to also talk about the challenges of digital identity as well. You talked earlier in the conversation about privacy, about standards, and about a lot of the investments that Mastercard and others are making in that space. Yes. We look at 400 million people on the continent that are financially excluded. And I know that Mastercard has entered into a partnership with Paycode to capture biometrics of 30 million Africans to provide a digital identity and a digital bank account. I'd love for you to expand a little bit on what that program has taught you, where you are right now in that journey, and just what your perspective is on putting digital identity to work in order to bolster financial inclusion across the continent. Because it's a huge opportunity and obstacle, it seems, so far.
Indeed. We talk about, and the percentage may look small. So when you say 30% of people in Africa have no form of an identity, mm-hmm. we're talking about 300, 400 million people, as you say. And that's a barrier to any service, government service, financial service. What Mastercard is doing is to be able to say, look, we are not replacing the foundational identity by governments. We're saying we can be able to add a second layer, which is a functional identity, a credential that allows you to transact. When you're a farmer, for example, that when you bring your produce to the cooperative, using your community pass identity, for example, we will recognize that transaction and effect a payment. Our work with Paycode really is to democratize credential issuance at last mile, that we're able to do it in an offline environment. We're able to do it in a secure way, that today, from a technology perspective, we actually don't store biometrics, whether the template itself or even the pictures of individuals. We've been able to innovate through tokenization, the ability to issue a credential to someone and carry it over for transaction without storing the most sensitive data. And I think that is the power of what we bring on the table. And our partnership with Paycode and many other institutions will be to roll that out in Africa. And from a Mastercard perspective, in the next 5 years, we'd like to issue this unique credential to about 15 million African individuals and businesses by 2027, to be a form of identifier to allow them to transact and to enjoy services from government and the private sector.
That is wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Conversations like this would not be possible without support from you and from Mastercard and from your leadership. So thank you so much for spending some time with us and for supporting Semafor.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.